All right, so now that we have classified reinforcers, let's talk about how to identify reinforcers. So, reinforcers are only reinforcing if the future frequency of that behavior increases in the future. So, reinforcers can change and vary frequently for some of our kids. Just because something worked in the past doesn't mean it will be effective in the present or future. So, we use preference assessments in order to help determine possible items or activities for reinforcers. You can complete a preference assessment at any time. A lot of people suggest completing one at the beginning of every session when working with the child and throughout the session if you feel that satiation has occurred. We will cover three different types of stimulus preference assessments. With our preference assessment, it helps determine what may be an effective reinforcer right in that moment. It can give us a hierarchy of different reinforcing items, and then it can also help us determine if the MO is present. So, if in that moment the child may be motivated for an item. So, we will cover, as I said, three different types: asking, free operant, and trial based. I will also have links to examples of these that you can watch. Um, so, with asking, it is as simple as that. You can either ask the targeted person themselves, significant others, or complete a pre task choice. So when you ask the targeted person, you want to use open-ended questions. What would you like to work for? A pre-task choice would also be holding up two items. So not open-ended, but giving two options. Would you like this or this? When asking significant others, you would ask about different activities, tangibles, etc. There are also pre-filled out semi-structured interviews that you guys can access in order to complete some preference assessments by asking others. With free operant, that basically means that we will observe and record what activities the targeted person engages in their natural environment. So during a period of unrestricted access to numerous activities, we would take note of what the child is interacting with and seems to enjoy. So we can set up contrived situations for this where we specifically place out a number of different activities that are available and then record data on which ones the child plays with. We can also do this naturalistic in that just observing them in their natural setting. So during play in their home or at school, what they're most likely to engage with. We also have child-based methods. These are more formal methods for preference assessments. So we have single stimuli, or also called successive choice. We also have paired stimuli, also called forced choice. And then we have multiple stimuli, and within multiple stimuli, there's two different types. So with single stimuli, we present one item at a time and take note of the child or targeted person's reaction. With paired stimuli or forced choice, we provide two options and see which one the child interacts with. With multiple stimuli, we have multiple stimuli with replacement and multiple stimuli without replacement. With multiple stimuli with replacement and without replacement, you will start with an array of typically at most 8 items. That can be pretty overwhelming for some kids though. So anywhere from 3 to 8 items would be your ideal array size. And you would simply say pick one with the items out in the array and take note of what item the child picked. With multiple stimulus with replacement, we'd put that item back into the array, mix the array up, and ask them to pick one again. If they pick the same item, that shows a strong preference. If they pick another item, we'd take note. We'd do multiple trials of this until we collected data enough to suggest what items would be highly preferred. With multiple stimuli without replacement, we'd set up that same array. We'd ask the child to pick one, take note of that one, and take it out of the array. We'd mix up the array without that first item and ask them to pick one again. And we'd keep doing this for all remaining items in the array. Multiple stimulus without replacement will give us a hierarchy in ordering of items that are preferred. So all three of these are different types of preference assessments. Depending on your learner, you may navigate more toward one over another, but all three are effective and should be completed pretty regularly within your sessions with learners. We will quickly go over the guidelines to effective use of reinforcement in this video as well. So number one is initially reinforce each occurrence of the behavior. So when you're teaching a new skill, you want to use a fixed ratio of 1. So that is a schedule of reinforcement stating that after every targeted behavior, we will provide reinforcement. So that's a continuous schedule. Number two, use direct versus indirect reinforcement contingencies when possible. So use naturally reoccurring reinforcement, meaning an example of this would be if a child asked for a spoon in order to eat ice cream. They've asked for a spoon, the reinforcing item is eating the ice cream, rather than they ask for a spoon and we give them a high five. So naturally reinforcing would be getting to eat the ice cream. Indirect reinforcement would be that high five. Number three, gradually thin reinforcement schedule. So once the skill has been determined as mastered, we want to start implementing a discontinuous schedule of reinforcement, meaning that we will not reinforce every instance of that behavior at that point. There's no need to continue reinforcing every single behavior. So if we think about toilet training as a young child or a toddler or a person learning to use the restroom, we would reinforce every single time the child or person voided in the toilet. However, us as adults who have mastered this skill, we no longer require reinforcement to continue using the toilet. It becomes reinforcing in itself. Number four here is use a variety of reinforcement to prevent satiation. So you want to change up reinforcement as often as possible. Your MO can change. Items can become an AO rather than an EO. So if you remember those acronyms, AO is abolishing operation rather than establishing operation. So if we use the same item too many times or too frequently, it will become satiated. The learner will no longer want to engage with that item, and that's partly why we use those preference assessments as well. So number five is use contingent praise and attention. So we always want to pair our tangible reinforcement with praise and attention. So if you remember in our earlier video, we can pair neutral stimuli with reinforcement in order for that neutral stimuli to eventually become reinforcing as well. So our long-term goals would be to have vocal praise or social reinforcement rather than tangibles. That's why we always pair praise and attention. So those high fives, nice job, hugs, all of that good stuff when we deliver a tangible as well. Number six here is shift from contrived to naturally occurring reinforcers. So again, like we talked about in number two, just using those natural consequences so that they become reinforcers themselves as well.